Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Subplot A Course, a podcast discussing a new science fiction literary work on the second Tuesday of every month. I'm Stavros, and with me is someone who probably wishes the books were outlawed because then at least the students couldn't not do their homework. Charlie. Say hi, Charlie.
I mean, the little earbud seashells are what need to be outlawed.
It's true. Charlie teaches math. Also with me is Vincent, who expects the anti-literature mentality disease to really get going by 2025. Say hi, Vincent.
I think I'd be a little bit more excited about the blood purification double pumping mechanism they have going on, but I'll go with whatever you say, Stavros.
We can have both. How about that?
Yes, I am bi.
And finally, we're also joined by guest host Jose, who has probably put out more fires than Guy Montag has started in his career. Say hi, Jose.
Hello. Put catchy phrase right here.
Excellent. Jose is actually
Nice.
a real firefighter / paramedic, so we're really lucky to have you for a book that definitely does not do any of those things that you do professionally.
Yeah, how do those flamethrowers work, Jose? Is that fun?
We do have a tool that does start fires, actually, and I can go into that a little bit later. It's called a drip torch.
Yeah.
I want one of those.
You all It's not fancy like a flamethrower, though.
And yes, of course, in case no one's figured it out yet, we're talking about Fahrenheit 451 today, written by Ray Bradbury and published in 1953. So if you're listening to this, you should be prepared for spoilers. So let me just describe the plot for this. So set in America at some unspecified point in the future, the story focuses on protagonist Guy Montag, who is a fireman, except in this future, firemen start fires, specifically to cleanse otherwise fireproof houses of books and other reading materials in a society that prioritizes hedonism and ignorance in the name of preserving happiness, despite the fact that attempted suicides are extremely common. Montag's equilibrium is disturbed, though, first by an odd teenager who doesn't buy into the normal lifestyle, and he begins to have doubts about his profession when he responds to a call, and a woman prefers to die with her books. Eventually, Montag is compelled to start saving books from the fire, and on the calls he goes out on. And after discovering his teenage friend has been killed, he feigns illness from work and is confronted by his fire captain, Beatty, who suspects that he has reservations. His wife ousts him as a book hoarder, and Beatty confronts him, forcing him to set fire to his own home. Montag rebels, instead burning his way through the captain and their freakish murder dog robot, and evades the cops on his way out through the city until he makes it to the outskirts, where he meets a group of former literary professionals who are now hobos. The book ends with a massive war breaking out, and the city Guy Montag lived in being destroyed, with a curiously hopeful look towards the future. I don't know if you guys caught that, but it was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of great the city was blown up.
Yeah.
It goes all with the themes of the Phoenix, like they mentioned.
Yeah, totally. Definitely.
For those
Fire.
of you who listened to our last episode, those literary hobos are Adrian.
Yes.
Aw.
Our previous guest host. You would definitely be one of those
Yes.
book hobos. So Jose,
So dark.
we're lucky we have you with us, because as a real firefighter, like we said, it's not like you literally go do this, but as someone who does this for a living, what is your take here? Like, what is the book kind of, I mean, obviously it gets a lot of stuff wrong, but what kind of jumped out at you besides, wow, I actually have a quasi flamethrower apparently. Now I'm much more scared.
So it's just interesting. It just, to me, it just shows how you could use anything in the world. In this case, Ray Bradbury used firefighters and repurposed their tasks in society.
You mean a world where policemen beat up innocent people? I don't understand this concept.
Damn.
You don't understand this. It's kind of interesting, though, because even in the book, they still had policemen, but then they also had firefighters, which were doing a similar job as the police were doing, right?
I mean, I do like the part where, like, the firefighters show up, they're like, we're here to burn the stuff, and, like, the book owner's still there. They're like, God damn it, the policemen were supposed to show up and get rid of her so we could just burn the stuff, like, on the job without having to deal with, like, having to light people on fire.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, geez, extra paperwork. That's
Wow,
what it
Jose,
sounded like
is that
to
what
me.
happens when if someone dies on the job? Or are they just extra paperwork?
Is it
No,
just
that would be an
paperwork?
oversimplification.
Wait.
Thankfully.
But is it extra paperwork?
Technically, it's no more, but you do generally have to write more. So yeah, and paper is a thing of the past. We don't use paper anymore. Everything's all electronic.
Oh my god, we live in Ray Bradbury!
Yes, exactly. The books have been burned. Jose does not use books anymore.
Yeah.
Nope.
So what
No
else
more
jumped at
book.
you though? Like what? I mean, I actually have a more specific question there. So when Montag's kind of hanging out at the firehouse and all the dudes are just kind of hanging around playing cards, does that like you're like, wow, this is like my life?
So that is accurate. So the camaraderie is accurate in the fact that when you do go to the firehouse, we are working together. Not just working together, but we joke around. We hang out together in the evenings. If we have the time, if we're not busy running calls, whether they be fires, medical calls, vehicle collisions, or technical rescues, or just we actually assist the citizens, unlike burning the citizens in the
Well, I don't
book.
know. Maybe the citizens need help burning their books. Do you assist them with that?
Do you have passive aggressive conversations about who the mechanical hound's going to eat next?
We do have passive aggressive conversations, just
Sans mechanical
maybe not by
hound.
mechanical hound, but
It's actually speaking of the hound. So I mean, is the I don't know if this is the case anymore, but the kind of the stereotype of like the Dalmatian that hangs out with the firemen. Do you happen to know if that was a real thing in the 50s when this book was written, and he's just kind of making fun of that, or is this kind of just totally foreign to you? It's just like a death robot that they have for some reason in the book.
no. He takes a lot of things and then he just repurposes them. So not necessarily in the 50s did the fire departments have Dalmatians, but prior to that, when they were drawn by horses, they had dogs, and Dalmatians were a dog that kind of stuck out in everyone's mind. And the dogs were to protect the horses from stray dogs. So as the horses were pulling the cart with a tank of water or a group of firefighters or a pumper, some stations had a dog that would also run alongside those horses and protect them from other dogs running out into the street that may want to chase the horses.
Oh, they weren't rescue dogs. They were actually guard dogs.
Yeah, they're actually guard dogs in a sense. We don't have technology yet that is comparable to a dog's nose. It's just, and that is in a form that could be transported around over an area of land, like they do in the book, where the dog was able to, the mechanical, multi-legged dog was able to smell out the proteins of individuals and hunt them down. So we don't have that yet.
Well, I guess that's good.
Yet being the operative word.
Yet, yeah, exactly, and you got onto that.
Yeah.
Yet.
So was this like an affront to you, or like dogs are a good thing, and why is this dog a murder dog?
No.
Spider murder dog.
Spider murder dog with a needle proboscis.
I kept imagining it as a robot dog, but then it already told me it has 8 legs. Then I imagined it as like a robot spider with a dog head, but then I'm like, it clearly leaps and bounds at people. So I'm trying to imagine, how does a dog leap and bound with 8 legs? And that's what I spent largely most of my time with mechanical hounds thinking.
I actually, in my mind, the speaking of the dog, I actually envisioned. Do you guys remember Dog from Half-Life 2? Except like in a dog size. That's kind of what I was envisioning. But anyway, Jose, anything else kind of pop into your mind as far as
So for me, what popped into my mind was the salamander. The reason being is because a lot of people don't realize or recognize that the salamander is also a symbol of fire.
Fire!
And people are like, well, why is it It goes back to like ancient. I had to look it up too, because I was like, why do they keep using the salamander? But I've heard of it used as a symbol of fire before too. And it goes back to ancient times when people didn't know too much, and if fires occurred near an area, sometimes they would see salamanders crawl out and run away, and they were thinking, oh, the salamanders are invincible to fire, and that's why they associate it with fire. Also, just a trivia fact, there is a cooking appliance called a salamander. It's basically like a high-end broiler that you would use to cook or sear food on the top. So, Yeah.
Aren't
So
salamanders like weird little cave lizard type things?
Yeah, they're
I'm seeing this
amphibian.
in like a nature thing.
Yeah, they're like frogs. They're definitely
Yeah.
not fire related,
Okay.
but mythology wise.
What? I thought they were actually made of fire. Dang it!
Now you know, Charlie. We've helped you today.
Soon you'll tell me that
G.I.
foxes don't
Joe.
actually light themselves on fire.
No,
there's
those are
actual,
depressions.
there's no actual association with salamanders with real life firefighting, right? It's
Yeah.
just
no,
mythical
it's
or-
all an association from some medieval group, and then it kind of grew out from there, and just not knowing, and applying fire to salamanders for some reason.
interesting.
So,
They're like
yeah.
baby dragons. I mean,
Baby
that's totally
maybe it's
legit.
because they look like it. So,
Yeah.
baby
Interesting.
dragon.
Well, so let's jump into some other topics here. So one of the ones I wanted to talk about, and one of the things that stood out for me for this novel is that in the other dystopian books we've read, 1984 specifically, you get the sense that the government is kind of exerting its will here on the people, but in this book, I felt like the intellectualism or books specifically died out popularity wise, and then it got illegal, and then they established the firemen. It's like people just lost interest first, and then it became illegal, and I just kind of made me really sad because of society and how things are going.
To me, it's kind of like current society.
Yeah.
People are so fascinated
Too
with.
real.
Yeah, it is. I just want to feel good. They mentioned that in the book. I just want good things. I just want things now. Don't bother me with anything else. And I was thinking about that too, Stavros. But I was thinking about that too. I'm like, wow, this is pretty accurate. The things that I also, Captain Beatty mentioned that were still legal were porn and like comic books and trade books. They gave you the what, not the why, right? And it was all, and everything else was just for instant gratification. And through that, the government said, hey, we can control people by just making them quote unquote happy. Giving them.
That's the thing, though, is I wasn't sure if it was like a government control thing or the people themselves in this case being like, we just want to be happy. I don't want to think about these things that immediately don't make me happy. And then the government kind of picked that up and then rolled with it, as opposed to the government enforcing control over people.
I agree with that.
I think the way the book described it is that it started out as when you have a really intellectual book, an intellectual book will inevitably offend someone. And if you offend someone, then the book is offensive, and then the government was like, oh, no, it's an offensive book, let's get rid of it. And then you have another book that is counterpoint to that. It's like, oh, no, that's offensive to the other group, so let's get rid of that. And eventually became super bland. It's the only thing that doesn't offend anyone is porn. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, makes everyone happy. Okay, let's leave it in place. And Marvel comic books. Those are okay, too.
Vince, is it sad if I've heard almost literally that comment made entirely seriously about current day politics and society?
Yeah, it's
Where
sad.
It's like everyone hates each other, everyone argues, the only thing nobody wants to get rid of is porn.
Yeah.
I
feel
will
like
say
there's
that
offensive porn
modern
out
day
there,
politics is kind of sad.
Yeah. But the funny thing about this is I feel like Bradbury is being a little bit old man. You got to take into account this was written in 1953, and he's kind of doing the old man, back in my day we had books, we didn't have these newfangled stuff kids are into these days, like television and
Comic books and high-speed cars. The kids want to go drive their cars. Soon they'll be running people over for entertainment and nobody will care.
But the funny part is we are older now than he was when he wrote this book. He was 33 when he wrote this.
Shit, Stavros. Thanks for making me feel old.
Yeah. Thank you for making me feel dumb. I have written a book.
It's just funny. He's just doing all these old man things.
Yeah, but
It's funny as a math teacher where he's just and then people just wanting to learn math and science, but I'm like, that's science.
I don't think he's doing old man things. I think what he was doing is kind of like what we're doing, right? But that was his outlet to write at that point in time. How did you get? There was no obviously internet. There was no blogs or vlogs. So in order to get your point across, you either wrote an article in the paper, or you made a speech, you preached somewhere, or you wrote a book, right? And just like what we're doing now, he's getting his point across through a book, something that someone can read, and we're getting our point across through a
Podcast.
Yeah.
Jose, you give us way too much credit.
Yeah, but you're having fun with it, and so probably he was too.
Burning the people like Trogdor.
Yay! What?
Trogdor.
But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of interesting, that whole, like, it's like both old man kind of attitude plus like society doing it. Like, I don't know. It's just not like, I feel like it kind of breaks the typical like oppressive government kind of theme, I guess.
So I'm surprised how optimistic the ending of the book is, because apparently I was reading all the stuff at the end of the book about like him writing the the supplementary stuff about him writing the book and all that. Apparently, a lot of the editors were like, you should have some of the people say quotes from books and have them be misremembered to kind of give this idea of like the ideas carry on even if the exact writing doesn't. But he was very strict about like, no, I want it to be like the exact literature carries on and give hope in that specific sense.
Yeah, kind of strange the ending too, where the ending itself is like the city you were just in gets either bombed. I can't tell if he is specifically thinking it's nuked, but definitely flattened. And but these are like, but then like people, the old fogies that remembered the literature, like they survive and press on.
They're gonna go talk to the people about like the books they know, and everything will be great.
Will it?
That's really a really easy solution there.
Yeah, because I remember when I first read this when I was like way younger, it felt like awfully just simple and like books are everything, and I just would roll my eyes and be kind of like, yeah, I get it. You want me to care about English class, great. Whereas like an adult, like I pick up a lot more on sort of the commentary about society. Like I like the fact that it's kind of like 1984, but not as horrifically obvious as 1984.
Right. It's a little more.
But then there is the stuff about like we memorize the books and that saves society, and I'm just still kind of like, okay, I got what you're going for. Right.
I don't know. I still rolled my eyes every time Montag like fucked up and was like, I know that books are banned, but I'm gonna take out this book and read poetry to all my wife's friends. Like, come on, like you're a firefighter, you know that's like, not okay.
Going through it,
but then you wouldn't have.
I think that's how I felt, but I also like the idea that it's not because he has this great epiphany and idea. It's because he's suffering because of society, and that's what causes him to like move towards the right idea. But also B is what causes him to make a bunch of horrifically stupid decisions. Like, it made a lot more sense than I remember. Like, occasionally I'm like, why would you do that? But it kind of made sense in the context of he doesn't know how to do otherwise. This is his first time kind of trying to think for himself and figure it out. And, like, the girl died and his wife almost died and denies it and stuff like that. Like, he's kind of having a breakdown in addition to trying to figure out real solutions.
I agree. He is. It's something new to him, right? And he doesn't have someone's not telling him what to think. He has to think on his own, really, for almost like the first time ever, right?
Yeah.
So when you've been told something all your life, or when this is the way, and then now you have to start building, blazing your own way, he's left with a lot of errors and mistakes. And just like I forgot the old guy's name that he meets up with, the old guy was telling him, hey, I'll guide you. The old guy was his path, with his guide, right? But
right.
Still, Guy Montag's a young guy, and he makes mistakes when he went off on his wife's friends by reading them poetry, and
don't they literally all report him?
Yeah, yes. They do literally all report him.
Oh yeah, everyone reports him. Like, they're like, we ignored 3 calls, and then your wife called, and we're like, okay, we can't.
I guess we have to burn your house down. Come on.
That's the straw that broke the camel's back there.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, just to switch gears a little bit, like, the crux of Bradbury's argument here is that, it's obviously a critique of hedonism, because the people in the book, even though they drive the fast cars, and then they listen to the TV walls with all the volume turned up, and they don't have time to think, he's obviously trying to say that even though this hedonistic lifestyle is what people want, it ultimately doesn't make them happy in the long term. And kind of the opposite for books, like it'll make you sad in the short term, but at least you're using your effing brain. And, it's obvious because like the suicide attempts are so common and people have the carts that they pump your stomach with and they just like go to 10 calls a night or whatever. But how would this book change if the hedonistic lifestyle was successful? Like it actually made you happy.
You wouldn't have a book. As we know it now.
Are we kind of lucky that that doesn't provide long-term happiness?
I feel like that if this society was actually successful, it would not last very long. Because in a society without books, like, I guess my argument is that this generation is a transitional generation. Like, you're transitioning from the prior generation where there were enough books, enough education to provide bombs and TVs and technology and fireproof houses and firefighting, like, trucks and stuff like that. And then when you get rid of all books and all education, and you make people just watch TV essentially as education, I feel like your society is inevitably going to downgrade back, and eventually you make it back to the Stone Age because complex algorithms and like mathematical, computation and computers and all that sorts of stuff, you can't just teach with TV. So eventually you're going to lose all that, and there's a reason why like that country is involved in a war at that point, because I feel like it's like, in some ways, I feel like it's an allegory for like post-communist revolution in China, where you got rid of all the scholars and all the education. It's like everyone's going to be a factory worker and a farmer, and then it's like, well, yeah, and then after that, like, you kind of got screwed because you had no technology and everyone's more advanced than you, and the rest of the world could just shit on you because you had no technology and no advancements. And that's the reason why I feel like Montag City got bombed, and like eventually they would not have advanced further. They would just been really screwed.
Yeah, because they stopped the why, right? A lot of things in science, technology, and history, we got to it because of the why. Why is the sky blue? Why does heat burn? Fire burn? Why does this do that? Why does this do that?
Why do dandelions tell me why I'm in love?
Exactly. And it got us to figure out the what, right? Which is the computer, the TV screen, electricity. And it goes just along with what Vincent was saying, that, Guy's City stopped looking for the why and just provided the what, so they fell behind with the fighter jets, or going to war, and society just stopped not caring anymore, basically. They don't care as long as they're taken care of, and they're okay with that. And
they try to make it real obvious with, like, Mildred's friends, where it's like, oh, I'm on my fourth husband, because they just keep getting shipped off to war, and, like, it's never your husband, but it's been my husband 4 times, but you just get a new one, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Can't even remember their old husbands.
Yeah.
Super scary.
Collects them like Post-it stamps.
Yeah. So I think that's the one thing that surprised me reading it again, is, like, how callous everyone is, where it's just like, driving fast, mowing over pedestrians. He really doesn't like cars. He's just like...
He doesn't like fast cars and TVs and young kids getting on his lawn, I think. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, Montag.
Damn whippersnappers.
Okay, well, it's that time in the show where we do a little thing that we call a roleplay exercise. And I've talked to you guys about this before the show. So each of us is going to do a little acting. We're going to roleplay a little scenario. You've taken a book home from a fire. You have recently been to a fire in this universe, and you have saved a book of some kind. Explain to the group what the book is and why you did it. Would anyone like to go first, or shall I go first?
Do it, Stavros.
Okay. Yeah, so here we go. Hey guys, I have something. I'm not really sure if I should show it to you or not. I honestly, Disney doesn't like it at all. They're calling it Legends now, but I just can't let it be burned in some kind of barbaric Jedi funeral ritual. It's by Timothy Zahn. It's called Star Wars: Heir to the Empire. Disney doesn't want it to exist, but I'm keeping it at home, and it'll always be more comfort to me than stupid Ben Solo and their stupid
fan fiction.
Yep. Which is unfortunate. And they have a series there with
This is a topic of a whole different podcast.
I know.
And
Huh,
it's just so frustrating.
If only we had a science fiction literature podcast in which maybe we could end up discussing this at some point.
Indeed. All right, Charlie. For that smart comment, you get to go next.
Dang it.
Charlie always gets to go first.
Like, hey, Mildred. I know it's been a while since we've been close, but I know this is close, but I found this book. It's has all sorts of ideas. It's called 50 Shades of Grey.
Okay.
And it sounds like they're really close.
That's like porn.
And there's like ways to, for us to connect again. I know that our situation's different than theirs, but there's things I'd like to try. Just here, why don't you check this out and let me know what you think.
She's already called the fireman like 50 times.
Yes.
I like that one. Vincent, why don't you go next?
The name of my book? Fahrenheit 452. The sequel to Fahrenheit 451.
What?
It's all about me and how I memorized the Bible. And how I can't really remember how it goes, but there's a guy named Jesus. And he's definitely Hispanic, because I don't really know how this book goes. But I think he carried a bunch of wood around because he was a firefighter, and his dad really didn't like what he did, but he brought him back to life a bunch of times. I think it's a role-playing game. But Jesus, Fahrenheit 452.
Wow. It only took 22 episodes for us to get sacrilegious.
Wow.
Oh boy. All right. Well, let's go, Jose.
All right, Mildred. Hey, Mildred, I got this really, really good book. And it just shows you that when all the books are gone and people get about all books, they're going to end up forming a whole religion over someone's shopping list. So that would be what's it called? Canonical for Leibowitz.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was like, where is he going with this?
Post-apocalyptic out of someone's shopping list.
Wait.
Yeah. Form like a whole, religion out of this shopping list. Right? But they too were out there saving books and stuff like that. But it's just kind of funny how I thought it would be interesting. It's like, how do you really know what would be right at that point? As time goes on, I'm gonna save, Plato's whatever versus this is a shopping list. It's important.
Canonical for Leibowitz could have been a sequel to Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we better go to our final topic, which is the best and worst things about this book for everyone. This is our little summary segment here. So we can go through each of us and, just mention what the thing you liked the best, the thing you hated the most. So thing I liked for this book, like I said before, the twist on the kind of dystopia with the society kind of driving its own destruction because people are hedonists was really interesting for me. I really bought into that. So that was the thumbs up for me. The worst thing, some of the prose and some of the it's kind of a very minor critique, honestly. Some of the prose and some of the stuff Montag does. Like the prose is like a little bit too flowery to make it for me to really buy it that well. And kind of some things that Montag does, like reading books out on the subway and things like that, just seem like a little bit it just takes the magic spark of like wow, this is kind of crazy, and like today's society is a little bit too much like this, and that scares me and like just pulls me out of that. So that's my thumbs up and thumbs down for this. Why don't we go to Vincent first?
I think actually I have a couple pros. So one of the pros, actually, I like how complex the character of Beatty is. Beatty is like Captain Montag, or Montag's like captain, his boss. And his boss is clearly like got something going on because he can quote scripture and like literary passages. It's very clear that he's read a lot of books, which is technically supposed to be really illegal, but his knowledge is so great that you can't help but realize that he is a very literate fireman who's supposed to prevent literacy.
Also, and his death wish too, right?
Exactly. His complexity, they explain it in the end that like he goads Montag into like burning him to death because he's so like complicated as a character, but it's never really explained why he's so complex, and part of that like makes him a very interesting character because you recognize that he is like he realizes the value of literacy, but also hates literacy at the same time. So it's a very dualistic kind of character. So I like him. The second idea that I really like is the idea that every person in the end of the book, like all these literary people, represent one book each. It's like, we are the covers of books. Our brains are the content, but like our fleshy, kind of like shell is what holds these books. And our purpose is just to be this book. Like, I am the canticle for Leibowitz. Before I die, I'll pass it on to some other kid. Or I am the St. James Bible, and I will pass this on before I die, or something like that. It's an interesting concept that every person is just a representation of a book, which kind of speaks to what is more important, human life or someone's literary work in that lifetime. It's like, I am like a mere mortal and like a stupid little person made out of flesh, but whoever wrote the Bible, that person's way better than me. He may have wrote 5 books and I'm only worth 1/5 of his lifetime. It's a very weird way to think of life. I think I'm totally on board with Stavros, is that like Montag is like the stupidest protagonist you can come up with. It's like, I live in a society with censorship and I am the embodiment of censorship, and I'm just going to take a book, eat it out loud in public, and be like, hey, everybody, like, how stupid could you get at that point? So his stupidity is probably a major con, but the rest of the book is very interesting. So there are a lot of pros. Interesting, very classic book.
Yeah, nice. Let's go to our guest, Jose.
So I'll start off with the negative, or that I didn't like, and it's more along regards to a character. Mildred's
firefighters are bad. Jose, you're a bad man. You're a very bad man, Jose.
No, it's just Mildred's character. It just her character just annoyed me. I did not like her character. It wasn't necessarily how he wrote her. It was more about who her character actually was. And the reason I didn't like her character is because it's unfortunate, but out there in society, I see so many people like that.
Yeah.
And we go on all these calls where someone's grandma is, just called 911 and she's like basically dying in the living room, and the son or the grandson or grandchild is sitting in front of the TV as we walk in, and they just point, oh, she's right there, and continues to watch TV. It's just like, it just kind of disgusts me sometimes. It goes back to my experiences I've seen, these individuals, and just like, dude, that's another human being, that's another person,
and your family member.
Yeah, your family member on top of that, and you just don't care. And you can't be disturbed to turn the TV off, go over there, help your family member, and it was just so. And that's why I didn't like her character, because it did bring a lot of connections together from what I do see out there in the real world. But I do have to agree with Vince. I did like Beatty's character a lot. I thought his character was written well. I liked the way his character thought and the way that he conducted himself. And I also like the message that the book brings. So I have 2 pros. I like the message that the book brings, and it's very relevant now as it was, over 50 years ago. Yeah. And it's too bad that people don't take heed of that more. But in the very book itself, it tells you why people don't, because people have to change within. They can't be forced to change themselves. So
yeah, it's interesting how timeless it appears to be. Like, it applies, 60 years later, 70 years later. Crazy. Mm-hmm. Okay, Charlie, are you ready?
I was really surprised because, I read this forever ago, like back in school, and I kind of remember it's like, yeah, I get it, it's obvious, that sort of thing. And then, say, like 10 years ago as an adult, I read Brave New World for the first time, and kind of it came upon me. I was like, okay, this is like, what's wrong with society? Is everyone is just like addicted to entertainment and like completely shallow stuff. And then I read, last year we read 1984, and it's like, yeah, it's getting kind of creepy how like everyone's kind of getting stuck in their own positions and stuff like that. So I was surprised that, like Jose said, even though this story is much more personal than those two were, those seem to get like much more like the bigger problems. Like both of them have like the main character has discussion with government guy who tries to explain everything. The closest thing we get to that in this book is Beatty, who I actually found really interesting because, like Jose said, or was it Jose or Vincent was talking about Beatty?
Both.
Oh,
Both.
Vincent,
All of
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like it's so obvious that for him to have this discussion, he has to be in so deep that it's almost inconclusive what side he's actually on.
Yeah. Good point.
But I was so like the whole characterization of Mildred and society and everything like that, even though as a kid it feels like, oh, they just don't get it. It's like old man stupid stuff. As an adult, it feels a lot more legit, where it's kind of the lack of empathy, the how society is purposely building self-absorbed, in terms of how the book kind of sees it from a 50s perspective, thrill seekers. But as a teacher, it's hard when you have that kid who just wants to pop in his or her headphones and do that. And I know math's not the most exciting thing to discuss, but it's instead of really try or most importantly, they have that instead of having to interact with those around them, and how like culture and media shield them from reality or even create like false reality. Yeah, I found it a lot more. I was surprised at how effective I found it, while finding like some of the stuff like oh look, each person has memorized a book kind of like cloying in the end.
Yeah.
Charlie, you have to
Like
memorize all of the physics primer textbook. Good luck.
I'm lazy. Just memorize like 3 formulas and then like a bunch of calculus, and then you got like 90% of high school and like introductory college physics, and I'm too lazy to remember my actual college physics and stuff. So one thing I want to talk about is how she's talking about her family and that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Where people do seriously kind of feel like these, not to be commenting on ourselves, like podcasters and YouTube hosts and stuff like that. It's almost like they're their friends that they follow.
Yeah.
The fact that feels very real compared to how like Mildred talks about these people who aren't really there while Montag's there and wants to have like a maybe real discussion, but it's like, no, I got to keep up with what they're saying on
Family. Yep.
Yeah, quote the family. Like I felt like that was surprisingly pertinent.
Yeah. And that's basically all the time we have. Thank you so much, Jose, for joining us. We're glad you could get your actual relevant experience in with us.
You're welcome.
We avoided one very important question. Does paper burn at 451 degrees Fahrenheit?
Well, it will burn at that temperature, yes.
Does it burn at a lower temperature? Like, what is the exact temperature at which paper
So
burns?
there's so many types of paper out there.
Jose,
And
you're
it
not
can burn
answering the
at all
question.
different-
What is the truth?
What is the truth? It's a moving target. There's so many different types of paper. You can't just say that one will burn at that and that one will burn at this.
I do
Yes, you can. You're a firefighter. You can say it, Jose. Go ahead.
But in any event, that's all the time we have. Of course, as usual, if you, listener, have feedback or suggestions on books we should read and discuss, you can reach us at subplotofcourse@gmail.com or on Twitter at subplotpodcast. And next month, for April, we're going to be reading the novella The Wandering Earth by an author whose name I'm definitely going to mangle, Liu Cixin, I think.
How dare you, Stavros?
I know, I've offended someone already. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Sorry, it was me and Jose. Thanks for coming.
How dare you, Stavros? I'm offended on behalf of all Chinese people.